The night my sister introduced me as the harmless one, something inside me cracked loud enough for only my heart to hear. She said it casually, like describing furniture that had never mattered. Everyone laughed, even my mother. No one noticed me stiffen. No one cared that I did. That was the moment I realized I could vanish from that room, from that family, from that entire version of my life, and not a single person would pause their conversation. My name is Linda Wells, and that night was the last time I let anyone decide who I was. The last rotor finally stilled against the wet landing pad, but the silence it left behind was louder than the storm itself. The air reeked of fuel and salt, the kind that seeps into your skin and stays there long after the rain stops. I sat alone inside the operations cabin, the hum of the generators fading until all that remained was the steady drip of seawater from my boots. I should have felt relief. 27 people were alive. A vessel was lost, but lives were not. Still, there was a weight in my chest that the wind couldn't carry away. Every storm has its own voice. The worst kind is when it goes quiet. By the time I reached Norfolk, the world outside had turned black and metallic. My apartment was small, sparse, and still smelled faintly of the ocean. I hung up my flight jacket, peeled off my gloves, and dropped my phone on the table. It lit up immediately, notifications stacking one after another. Don't forget Elna's engagement next week. Ryan's wonderful. We're so happy for her. Come early, and don't wear your uniform. People won't understand. That last line stung in a place that should have been numb by now. I opened my laptop to finish the mission report, but a new email appeared. Subject: Incident Review, Beaufort Operation. 6 words, cold as steel. Incident review meant someone was opening an investigation. I stared at the screen until the reflection of my own face blurred into the glow. Outside, the wind was still moving, soft, persistent, waiting. I turned on the lamp, flipped through the worn notebook I always carried, and stopped at the last page. A line I'd written 2 years ago stared back at me. Silence can drown even the strongest person, unless they learn when to speak. I closed the book and let the room fall quiet again, knowing I might need those words sooner than I thought. I left Norfolk on a pale Saturday morning, the kind of sky that made everything look washed out and half awake. The highway stretched endlessly ahead of me, gray and straight, pulling me toward something I couldn't name. The hum of tires and the low music from the radio blurred together, but my mind kept circling back to that email. Incident review. 2 words that could turn months of work, of judgment calls made in chaos, into a question mark. By the time I reached Charleston, the air had thickened with humidity. I pulled into a small rest stop near the old base where I once trained new rescue teams. Lieutenant Ramos was already waiting, standing under the overhang with a cup of coffee and a look that told me I wasn't going to like what I was about to hear. He handed me a wrinkled fax. The ink smudged from rain. "You need to see this," he said. "The Beaufort investigation's been authorized. Someone claims you issued the wrong order and caused damage to federal property." I looked up at him. "Who filed it?" "Elliot Haskins," he said quietly. "Nephew of Admiral Haskins, and the Admiral still holds weight on the Atlantic board." The rain hit the pavement harder. I folded the paper once, slid it into my jacket pocket. "Thank you, Ramos. I'll take it from here." He hesitated. "They won't make this easy on you. They never have," I said, and walked back to my car. The highway swallowed me again. I turned the radio on just to fill the silence. A local anchor was reporting on the storm. 27 survivors were rescued last night by a Coast Guard team under the command of Commander Linda Wells. I turned it off. Hearing my name spoken like a headline felt strange, detached, like they were talking about someone who no longer existed. The rain began again, soft at first, then steady. The wipers moved in rhythm with my thoughts. Somewhere between the static and the hiss of the tires, I realized this drive wasn't just about going home. It was about walking straight into the next storm. By late afternoon, Savannah shimmered under gold sunlight, the city too perfect to feel real. The Spanish moss hung low from the oak trees, swaying lazily over cobblestone streets. Beauty like that always made me uneasy, It hid things too well. The river house my mother had rented for Elena's engagement was already buzzing with preparations. Florists carried in buckets of white roses. A catering team adjusted linens that matched the color of champagne. My mother moved among them like a director, polished and controlled, her hair set, her pearls steady. When she saw me, she looked me over from head to toe, the way someone inspects a uniform before a ceremony. "You look fine," she said with that pleasant smile she used when she meant something else. "Just remember, don't bring up work tomorrow. Elena and Ryan should be the focus. No one here really understands what you do out there." I wasn't planning to. I said, "Good. You always know how to be considerate," she replied, already turning away to give another order. Considerate, a graceful word for making yourself disappear. Upstairs. I was unpacking when Elena burst through the door, glowing in a way that only someone untouched by failure can. She smelled like expensive perfume and confidence. "Ryan can't wait to meet you," she said, brushing imaginary dust from my shoulder. "Just don't make him feel awkward about the Coast Guard thing. You know how proud he is of the Navy. He takes it really seriously." I smiled faintly. "Don't worry, Elena. I'm used to standing quietly in the background." She laughed, not hearing what I meant, and left humming some wedding tune. Dinner that night was filled with small talk and plans for the engagement party. My mother spoke of flower arrangements, Elena of photographers. I let their voices fade into the steady sound of the river outside, the soft pulse of Savannah at night. When I finally checked my phone, there was a new message blinking on the screen. "Meeting confirmed, 0600. Monday, Norfolk HQ." A summons. I read it twice, feeling the air in the room tighten around me. Outside, the river lapped against the wooden posts, slow and rhythmic. That sound once meant peace to me. Now it only sounded like a warning. Another storm was forming on the horizon, and this one didn't come with a weather report. I've never liked parties where every laugh sounds the same. That night, the ballroom by the Savannah River glowed gold, chandeliers dripping light across polished floors, every face bright with the kind of joy that needs an audience. I stood there in a pale blue dress, smiling just enough to disappear. When it came time for introductions, my mother placed her hand on my shoulder. Her voice was sweet, rehearsed. "This is Linda, Elena's older sister. She used to work at sea. She's stable now. Stable." A word meant to soothe, but it landed like a verdict. A woman nearby leaned closer. "Coast Guard, right? Do you teach swimming or do the paperwork?" The table laughed. I smiled back. Sometimes both. They laughed harder, not hearing what I didn't say. Elena swept through the crowd like sunlight, flawless and adored. She brought Ryan over, her fiancé, her pride. His handshake was firm, his eyes polite but distant. "Nice to meet you. I've worked with a few from the Guard." He spoke like someone used to being listened to, not questioned. I drifted to the balcony, where the river shimmered dark under the moon. Behind me, my mother told someone that I was still single, but doing well. I almost laughed. Doing well, a phrase people use when they can't find anything else to praise. Then Ryan began his toast. "Last year, I was part of a mission near Beaufort, waves 20 feet high. We would have lost men if our SEAL commander hadn't changed heading at the last second." I froze. He got it all wrong. The direction, the vector, the time. The storm replayed in my mind, every sound, every order. "Proceed 162 degrees. I set my glass down. My voice came out steady. It wasn't 180. The wind shifted southeast. 162 kept you alive. The room fell silent. Ryan stared at me. "You were there?" "I gave that order," I said. He stood straight, then raised his hand in a perfect salute. The sound echoed like thunder in the still air. 3 SEALs nearby followed. A retired admiral approached. "Commander Wells, your Beaufort report's been part of our Norfolk training modules." The whispers began. Elena's smile faltered. My mother's glass shook. "You're a commander?" she whispered. "I always was," I said quietly. Then my phone buzzed. A message flashed. "Effective immediately. Commander Wells suspended pending investigation. Report 0600 Norfolk HQ." The air vanished from my lungs. I slipped the phone into my clutch and met Elena's glare. "You couldn't let me have this night, could you?" she hissed. "Don't worry," I said softly. "I don't need your stage. I just need the truth." No one stopped me as I left. The laughter resumed behind me, muffled and hollow, as if the storm outside had swallowed the sound whole. Rain swallowed Savannah. Streetlights shimmered against flooded pavement as I gripped the wheel. Pulse still pounding. Ryan called 3 times. I didn't answer. HQ messages filled the screen. "Report immediately." The storm outside matched the one building in me. Every mile north replayed the radio crackle of Beaufort, the roar of waves, the voice that once trusted mine. Then my phone rang again. "Ramos, Commander, I've seen your suspension order. It came from Admiral Haskins himself. His nephew filed the complaint. You're certain?" "Absolutely. They're making you the scapegoat." I tightened my grip until the steering wheel groaned. If they want a storm, they'll get one. As I crossed the bridge, headlights appeared through the downpour. Ryan stood there, soaked to the bone, blocking my lane. I rolled the window halfway. "What are you doing here?" "Apologizing," he said, breathless. "I didn't know it was you in Beaufort. You saved my life. You don't owe me anything. I did my job. You need to know. Haskins mentioned your name. He's coming after you." I met his eyes through the rain. "I've survived 80-knot winds. Captain, I'll survive this too." He stepped aside. I drove past. The wipers beat faster, drowning the sound of my heartbeat. The radio hissed with static. A weather alert warning small boats to stay ashore along the Virginia coast. A storm warning, or maybe a sign. Lightning split the sky ahead, flashing silver across wet asphalt. In every strike, I saw the same night, screaming wind, the order I gave, the 31 lives saved. Now that same decision was a weapon pointed back at me. I turned the volume up, letting the rain erase everything behind me. The road stretched forward like an unbroken wave. I pressed the gas harder, driving straight into the storm that had been waiting all along. Rain followed me out of Savannah, hitting the windshield so hard it sounded like 1,000 small betrayals. The road stretched ahead in a blur of gray, headlights scattering across puddles that reflected nothing. I didn't feel tired, just emptied out. It was the kind of hollow that comes after realizing you've been living as someone else's afterthought. Ryan's name flashed on my phone. I let it ring, crossing the Ravenel Bridge. I pulled over, stepped out into the storm, and let the rain soak through my clothes. The city lights disappeared behind me, swallowed by darkness. A few hours ago, a room full of people had seen me for the first time. Now, I was suspended. I used to think storms ended once you left them, but sometimes they just learn your name. My phone rang again. Ramos's voice crackled through static. "Commander, I've seen your suspension order. Admiral Haskins signed it himself. His nephew Elliot filed the complaint. So that was it. Not procedure. Politics. Keep a copy." I said, "I'm coming back tonight. You sure you don't want a break?" "I don't get breaks." By 2 May. I stopped at a gas station. The rain hadn't let up. Ryan called. I hesitated, then answered. "They're calling you reckless at the base," he said. "Haskins wants to make Beaufort a warning. I won't let him." "You don't owe me anything." "Ryan, it's not about owing. You saved me. They're rewriting history." "Then let them write," I said quietly. "I'll fix their grammar." I hung up. Lightning cut the horizon open, showing the highway ahead, long, merciless, without exits. Near dawn, I reached Norfolk. The rain had faded to mist. 2 junior officers stood near the hangar. One whispered, "That's her, the one who gave the wrong order." I heard it, said nothing. Being misunderstood by strangers is easy, but when your own system turns its back, that's a wound you don't recover from. The hearing room was bright and cold, all glass and fluorescent light. 6 officers sat across from me. Admiral Haskins at the center. "Commander Wells," he began, "you're accused of changing course without clearance, causing $400,000 in damage. What do you have to say? Radar logs, signatures, and an audio recording." I replied. I played the data. Winds shifting southeast at 21:43, course corrected to 162. Elliot interrupted. "You forged that." I slid the logbook forward. That's your handwriting, Lieutenant. Silence followed. Then I played the radio file. My voice came first. Request heading changed to 162. Then his uncle's. Clear and irrefutable. Proceed 162. Confirmed. The room froze. A young officer looked at Haskins. That's you, sir. He didn't answer. The chair finally spoke. Suspension lifted. Commander Wells acted by protocol. Admiral Haskins. Prepare your report. I saluted. Thank you for letting me speak. Outside. The air smelled of salt and sunlight. My phone buzzed. Ryan. You're cleared, he said. News travels fast. I'm telling Elena the truth. Then do it for the truth. I told him, and hung up. The storm had passed, but not the one waiting back in Savannah. That afternoon, I sat alone in a small room overlooking the Atlantic, the sky the color of steel. When the board entered, no one looked at me. The lead officer spoke quickly, his tone as dry as paper. Commander Wells acted within SAR protocol. No grounds for suspension. Admiral Haskins will be placed on administrative leave pending review. I nodded. No applause. No handshakes. Only the dull echo of chairs scraping the floor before they left me in silence. The fluorescent light glared off the metal table, reflecting a face I barely recognized. Tired. Pale. Hollow-eyed. Truth had cleared my name, but it had also stripped everything else away. People say the truth sets you free, but they forget to mention it leaves you standing alone. Outside, wind swept the pier, carrying the sharp sting of salt. I removed my cap, letting the air tug at my hair. The ocean lay still, pretending peace. My phone buzzed. A message from Ryan. They can't rewrite the ocean. Thank you. I didn't answer. I wanted silence more than praise. As the sun sank behind the horizon, I knew where I was headed next. Savannah. Not for vindication, but to finally close the wound that never healed. Savannah greeted me with a gray sky and air thick enough to taste the coming rain. The house by the river hadn't changed. Still beautiful, still too polished to feel real. The same curtains, the same faint smell of lilies, the same illusion of warmth that never reached the walls. My mother sat on the porch when I pulled in. Her hands trembled slightly when she saw me. Inside, Elena and Ryan were clearing the last of the dried flowers from the engagement party that had ended the night. Everything began to fall apart. For a moment, no one spoke. The silence between us was heavier than any accusation. At last, my mother's voice broke the stillness. You're not angry with me, are you? No, I said. I'm just tired of making myself smaller, so other people can feel comfortable. She lowered her eyes. I only wanted to protect Elena. She's always been afraid of being compared. I didn't realize how much you've grown. I smiled faintly. I haven't grown, Mother. I've just survived longer. Elena stepped forward, her eyes red-rimmed. I was wrong. I never understood what you carried. You don't have to understand, I told her. Just remember that respecting someone can save them in ways pity never will. Ryan approached quietly and handed me an envelope. From SEAL Command. They wanted you to have this. It's official recognition for saving lives in Beaufort. The words were simple, military plain. In recognition of Commander Linda Wells, whose leadership prevented the loss of U.S. personnel. I folded the letter, nodding once. Thank you, Ryan. Papers can record it, but peace comes from knowing I did what was right. My mother reached for my hand, her voice cracking. Can you forgive me? You don't need forgiveness, I said softly. Just stop believing I have to shrink so others can grow. The wind swept through the porch, carrying the scent of the river and wet earth. For the first time in years, the silence didn't sting. It simply settled. In that quiet, I realized I didn't need to win. I just needed to let go. I returned to Norfolk at dawn. The horizon was still half asleep, brushed in pale gold as the first light touched the water. The sea was calm, smooth as glass, the kind of quiet that felt almost sacred after too many storms. I wore my uniform and walked down the pier. No one was there, just the gulls circling above, and the gentle rhythm of waves against the dock. My phone buzzed once in my pocket. A message from Elena. I told everyone about you. They should know who you are. I smiled, faintly. There was no need for apologies anymore, no need to be understood. I slipped the phone away and stood still, letting the morning wind move through me. Sunlight glanced off the silver insignia on my shoulder, a single glint of something real and enduring. I thought of the storms, the rescues, the laughter I never joined, and the names I carried in silence. All of it condensed into one truth. I was still here. No applause, no headlines, just the steady breath of someone who'd survived. As I turned from the pier, leaving the tide behind, I finally understood. Some battles end not with victory, but with peace. And peace, I realized, was enough.